Greetings from Jerusalem to the proud people of Iran. Your leaders forced a 12-day war on us, and they lost miserably. They lie through their teeth, but on rare occasions, they tell the truth. A few days ago, the Iranian president said, "We have problems with water, electricity, money, and inflation. Where don't we have a problem? There won't be any water in the dams by September or October." He's right. Everything is collapsing. In this brutal summer heat, you don't even have clean, cold water to give your children. Such hypocrisy, such disdain for the Iranian people. To live like this is not fair to you. It's not fair to your children. But I have very good news. Israel is the #1 recycler of water in the world. We recycle 90% of our wastewater, and we lead the world in desalination. We know exactly what to do, so Iran can also have plentiful water. Almost a decade ago, I opened a Telegram channel in Farsi to teach water management to Iranians. 100,000 Iranians joined almost instantly. The thirst for water in Iran is only matched by the thirst for freedom. So here's the great news. The moment your country is free, Israel's top water experts will flood into every Iranian city, bringing cutting-edge technology and know-how. We will help Iran recycle water, we'll help Iran desalinate water. So much money has been burned to hell. The tyrants of Tehran preferred sending hundreds of billions of dollars, not to you, to Hamas, to Hezbollah, to the Houthis, instead of funding your hospitals, your schools, and your roads. It doesn't have to be this way. I urge you to be bold and brave, to dare to dream. Take risks for freedom, for your future, for your families. It's worth it. Take to the streets, demand justice, demand accountability, protest tyranny. Build a better future for your families and for all Iranians. Do not let these fanatic mullahs ruin your lives for a minute longer. And know this, you are not alone. I stand with you. Israel stands with you. The entire free world stands with you. The tyrants of Tehran, so cruel, so callous, so cowardly, they won't last long. You know that. History will record that. Soon your country will be free. Water will be plentiful. Your economy will recover and thrive. Your children will be joyous and carefree again. As our founding father, Theodore Herzl, said of the Jewish state, if you will it, it is no dream. And I say to you, if you will it, a free Iran is no dream. Now is the time for action. Now is the time to fight for freedom. Iran bariyeh Irani.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live streaming. I appreciate you all, whether you're watching this stream on YouTube, on Rumble, or on Ganjin World, and I'm reading your live comments, the live chat, and it's hilarious. I have never seen Benjamin Netanyahu as desperate as in this video. After bringing up every single factor that he could in the past years against Iran, now he's talking about water and how he could help the Iranians to have clean water. The problem with this video is that Benjamin Netanyahu is seen by the vast majority of the world, including the politicians in the countries which are considered allies to Israel, as a criminal psychopath. Like, he is not respected. He is feared, and everybody knows how dangerous he is. Everybody in different places around the world. That's why he's feared. But he is not respected. And if these politicians would be honest and tell us their opinion about Benjamin Netanyahu, we will hear a completely different rhetoric and different approach also vis-a-vis Israel. But unfortunately, we are not going to see that anytime soon. And there is this competition to portray Iran as the most dangerous country in the world, that everybody's crazy there, these mullahs and everything. And of course, those who watch my YouTube channel know when I criticize the Iranian foreign policy approach in the region, people come and say, "What are you saying? What are you doing? Why do you say this? And why do you say?" Well, this is a disclaimer, and this is something that I have to tell you today. Yes, there is going to be some criticism to Iran's foreign policy. However, we are going to try at least to address this issue objectively during this conversation with you, because war could be launched and waged again against Iran soon. We don't want that. We don't want for Iran to be bombed. We don't want for a war to erupt in the region, but this is a serious possibility, and this is going to be today's episode. And speaking of danger and dangerous individuals, those who are watching Syriana Analysis, those who know me from 2017, since I started this YouTube channel, I'm sure that they have already seen me on multiple occasions after I posted over 1,100 videos or something on YouTube, and they know who am I, what are my opinions, and what are basically my intentions to make these videos, right? However, today, one of the feminist environmental activists, this is a guy, by the way, he's Armenian from Russia. He says that he's exiled to Germany. And I have seen him one time here in Berlin giving a speech during one of the pro-Armenia demonstrations. And I wondered, why do they give the microphone to this guy? He's completely clueless. He doesn't even know what is he talking about when it comes to Azerbaijan. He just hates Russia. So he comes to this demonstration trying to compare between Azerbaijan and Russia. And I found that a little bit absurd that they invite someone who knows nothing about geopolitics to give a speech to hundreds of people demonstrating for the Armenian rights and the return of the Armenian prisoners of war. And today, this guy tried to challenge me on X. And why I'm bringing this, because we're speaking about danger and dangerous people, right? So apparently I'm a very dangerous person, guys. Those who are watching this channel, Syriana Analysis, that's why I want to bring up this to you. So you make up your own mind if you want to continue following this channel or not. So here is why Kevork Almassian is seen as a liar and potentially dangerous. This is the guy, his name is Arshak Makichian. He says, Kevork Almassian spreads propaganda. He systematically relays narratives from Bashar al-Assad regime, which doesn't exist anyways, and Russia, often contradicted by independent sources. What are these independent sources? The sources that are funded by Qatar, Turkey, by the United States, by the Soros organizations, especially the NGOs, and journalistic investigations, of course, like he means the Bellingcat, which has affiliations to the MI6. Kevork Almassian manipulates facts. He presents events, the war in Syria, conflicts in Ukraine, Armenia, etc., by reversing the roles of victim and aggressor in order to demonize opposition to the regimes he supports. So basically, this guy who is Armenian, when he brings this example, he's basically saying that I am reversing the roles and I'm presenting the oppressors as the victims. And in this case, apparently, when I defend Armenia, and he's an Armenian, it seems that I am, according to him, defending the oppressor, and he is defining Armenia or describing it as the aggressor in this case. He's being Armenian, right? Kevork Almassian targets opponents. He regularly attacks political opponents, human rights activists, or journalists, accusing them of working for foreign powers or being Western agents, which can put their safety at risk. Like, I swear to God, where are these accusations? Kevork Almassian works with media linked to authoritarian states. He has worked and collaborated with outlets funded by Syria or Russia, known for serving state propaganda. Russia Today, Sputnik, Syrian state media. I have never worked with Syrian state media. I have never worked with Sputnik. And I worked for Russia Today, Arabic, for 3 months. Okay, 3 months in 2016 as a freelance writer. And after 3 months, I left. So all these things are crap. Kevork Almassian infiltrates Western debates. Infiltrates. Look at the wording. While living in Europe, notably in Germany, he takes advantage of freedom of speech to spread authoritarian narratives while discrediting free media. What is the free media in this case? We are the free media because we are the ones that are not funded by any corporation or any billionaire or any oligarchs with no political affiliation. The funding of this channel is 100% by the AdSense on YouTube and via the supporters of Syriana Analysis, whether through Patreon, Buy Me Coffee, or through PayPal. Kevork Almassian whitewashes war crimes. He denies or minimizes the use of chemical weapons in Syria. Yes, it never happened. And if it happened, those were false flag chemical attacks, and we have proved them over and over and over again with facts and evidence from the ground, despite independent investigations by the OPCW, which this organization suppressed the findings of their own researchers and changed the outcome of it, and then they kicked out or marginalized the investigators who leaked the original report, especially when it came to the Duma alleged chemical attack, contributing to public confusion about proven crimes. In short, Kevork Almassian is considered dangerous not because he expresses an opinion, but because he uses disinformation techniques coordinated with authoritarian regimes, aiming to influence public opinion and undermine trust in reliable sources of information. I just wanted to share this with you guys, since many of you watch Syriana Analysis and support this YouTube channel or support my work. They say I'm a very dangerous person. I'm spreading disinformation. Just for you to know, I'm bringing some of this criticism against me. So, a few years ago, I used to really feel worried when I read such things, and I would be really upset. And why are they saying this? I'm not like this, and blah, 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 and start blaming myself. Am I doing something wrong? And now when I read this, I laugh, really. I truly laugh, because what they're trying to do is, I have a track record of 8 years of work. If you want to debunk any of my, let's say, facts or analysis or statements, you can bring and choose this, whatever I said wrong or lied, basically, and debunk them, right? But have they done that? No. They just slander, and they call you names, and they say you are with authoritarian regimes and this and that. So I don't care at all about whoever is this guy. And he considers himself the Greta Thunberg of Russia. And your opinion, I would take the opinion of Zeus about geopolitics over the opinion of this guy. So this would be my opinion. Anyways, guys, will Israel attack Iran? That's a very serious possibility. And this could happen before December of this year, and possibly in August of this year, according to an explosive article published in the Foreign Policy. And I'm going to come and address that later in this live streaming. However, let's start building the case why Israel feels the urge to come after Iran one more time and start a second phase of war against Iran. Now, I will start today's conversation with you with an article published in Time. And the author is definitely and apparently, she is a Zionist, or she is propagating Zionist talking points in this case in order to make a case against Israel, against Iran. So I'm bringing this article to show you how the pro-Zionist camp thinks of Iran and why they think that Iran must be bombed again or this war should be continued again. So this article is published basically in Time, as I said, and this is published in June of this year, right? June 22nd, just on my birthday. How Iran became isolated in the Middle East. And this is published by Lina Khatib, and she's an associate fellow at Chatham House, MENA program, and a visiting scholar at Harvard Kennedy School. So for almost 5 decades, the Ayatollahs have pursued an expansionist policy of exporting the revolution and forward defense. But what Iran thought was a winning strategy to consolidate long-term leadership in the Middle East has backfired. Iran's model presented Tehran as a mentor and patron, incubating armed groups under the pretext of fighting just causes. For years, Iran's strategy appeared to be working. Iran-backed groups became the strongest actors in their countries. The seeming success of Lebanese Hezbollah became a template for others in the Middle East. Tehran grew blind to its brittleness, believing that it could outmaneuver the US, Israel, and Arab countries. And the international community is the West. Anyways, this included negotiating in an international nuclear deal while it was enriching uranium beyond the level necessary for civilian use and thinking it could withstand the consequences of Hamas' October 7, 2023 attack on Israel. Iran had nothing to do with the October 7 attacks, by the way. This was completely planned by Hamas, and the major funder of Hamas was Qatar, and Israelis were watching Hamas, definitely planning for it, and they waited for them to execute the plan and attack on the kibbutzes, and then enacted the Hannibal directive to kill as many Israelis as possible. And then they started the atrocity propaganda. You remember decapitated babies, burned, raped, and all these things in order to justify the ethnic cleansing and genocide against the Palestinians. Iran had no knowledge and no clue about this attack whatsoever, but they continue talking about it as if it's Iran. Blindness also led Tehran to overestimate its friendship with Russia and China. Tehran saw Moscow as an ally when it intervened to prop up Syria's Assad regime in 2015. But Russia saw instead an opportunity to grow its influence in that country, consolidate its military presence on the Mediterranean, and stand up to the West. Now, there is something important here, and that is Iran and Russia had mutual interests in Syria, but then they also had different interests, right? So they shared some of the interests in Syria, including keeping the former Assad government intact or defeat the terrorist organizations there, or partly defeat them, at least send them then to Idlib. But at the same time, Iran and Russia didn't have the same let's say, end goal in Syria, one of which is the issue of Israel, Palestine, for example. Iran wanted to open a front in the Golan against the Israelis, and the Russians had forces there, and they imposed certain calm, or let's say certain level of cessation of hostilities there, because they didn't want to bring a new conflict besides the domestic one which was already brewing back then, right? So Russians and the Iranians definitely had different, let's say, end goals in Syria, but at the same time, they shared some of the mutual interests in the country. Now, Iran and China, for their part, struck a 25-year cooperation deal in 2021, but what Tehran viewed as rising global sway, China saw as a limited economic pact. Today, neither Russia or China will come to Iran's rescue. Beijing has always avoided getting involved in the Middle East conflicts and remained focused on its Indo-Pacific backyard. This is correct. China has no interest in activating any militaristic foreign policy, especially in the Middle East. It could be a quagmire for them. It could be something that could hold back their economic growth, and also it goes against the Chinese foreign policy strategy. Chinese foreign policy strategy is gain as much as influence possible with soft power, with investment, economic investments in different places around the world. Don't go and engage in any military conflict unless and it is in the periphery of China, when the Americans, or if the Americans and the Brits bring enough provocations in the periphery and the backyard of China, then we will definitely see China engaging in hostilities, but not in the Middle East or in anywhere in Africa and so on. So today, neither Russia or China will come to Iran's rescue. Beijing has always avoided getting involved in Middle East conflicts and remains focused on its... We said that. Okay. Moscow is bogged down in Ukraine and is prioritizing its years-long conflict there, which has only escalated in recent months. This is also true. So both China and Russia, allies, let's say, and strategic partners with Iran, they have no interest in coming in the Middle East and engaging in conflict. Like Russia allowed the fall of Syria because they were, it's not like they were sinking, but their energy was focused on Ukraine, right? So Russians are not interested to come for a direct confrontation for the sake of Iran, and the same goes with China. So Iran, as a regional power, doesn't have a superpower on its back, unlike Israel, as a regional power, has the United States on its back. So this is also how the Zionists or the pro-Israel camp sees. Nor will Iran's proxies save. those proxies, they mean the allies, right? These non-state actors. Israel has decapitated Hezbollah's leadership and destroyed much of its missile arsenal. We don't know, by the way, about this missile arsenal. This is an allegation I keep seeing repeatedly in mainstream media, but we don't know how much of the missile arsenal of Hezbollah has been destroyed or touched by the Israeli bombardment. And the group would lose much of its remaining domestic support if it drags Lebanon into another war. Yes, I think this is also a possibility because Hezbollah nowadays knows and can read the room very well. And even among the most pro-Hezbollah people, they are not interested in going or opening a front line for regional, for strategic regional considerations such as the conflict with Israel. Their focus now is to keep their community intact, especially that the supply chain has been broken and the axis of resistance is no longer. Therefore, Hezbollah has to focus its energy and weapons basically on protecting its own community inside Lebanon, especially that the neighboring country now, Syria, is ruled by a Daesh government. It's an ISIS Al-Qaeda government which has a thirst of blood against the Shias, and they would not hesitate to commit a genocide against the Shias in Lebanon if Hezbollah is knocked out or weakened or, let's say, disarmed in this case. So, for example, the other one is the scale of the Houthis' remaining arsenal in Yemen remains a mystery following a months-long campaign of U.S. airstrikes, but they are constrained by the escalation deals with Washington and Riyadh. Most of the Iran-backed Iraqi factions are also choosing self-preservation over involvement in an unwinnable battle with Israel and the US. Meanwhile, Syria has turned from a fertile ground to a hostile one for Iran and its assets after the Assad regime was toppled in December. Isn't it funny that all these mainstream journalists and so-called experts, when they mention Syria and mention the regime change in Syria and celebrate basically that now Syria has moved from being a pro-Iranian state into an anti-Iranian state, they don't mention who replaced Assad and what's the nature of this regime that is now in charge in Damascus, right? So finally, both the US and Israel want the mission achieved. And while the Arab Gulf states have pursued rapprochement in recent years with Iran and are calling for the escalation that is largely a symbolic gesture, they will ultimately not stand in the way of a new Middle East and a weakened Iran. The regime, it seems, may be taking its last breath and has no one to turn to. Now, I agree with one thing here, and that is the Arabic countries would not mind seeing Iran collapse or the regime or the government, call it whatever you want, in Iran collapses. But this is completely untrue that Iranian ruling government is taking its last breath in this case. But what we know so far about this first phase of attacks against Iran, which would be considered, in my opinion, learning curve, right? Learning phase also for Iran, because Iran was caught off guard by the first days of the attack, and the infiltrators among and within the Iranian government and the Iranian Mossad operatives on the ground, which operated these drones, and they have disabled many of the air defenses and assassinations against the senior commanders in Iran. So those were all shocking factors, but they could also be seen as learning phase for Iran. And one of the things that Iran could learn from the past attacks was how much they were infiltrated and what were the tactics of Israel in this case. And this is a very long investigation, by the way, by ProPublica. Israel secretly recruited Iranian dissidents to attack their country from within. This was published on August the 7th, so last week. And I have summarized this investigation for you guys. And this is a very good article. It just shows the tactics and the strategy of Israel there. So in the early hours of June 13, 2025, a small group of armed men moved quietly on the outskirts of Tehran. Leading them was a young Iranian known only by his initials, S and T. So there is a person with his first name starts with S and his family name starts with T. Their target was Iran's anti-aircraft defenses, crucial for protecting the capital from an aerial assault. What makes this raid different from past covert actions is not just the target, but who carried it out. According to ProPublica investigation, these were not Israeli operatives. They were Iranian dissidents, secretly recruited, trained, and directed by Israel's intelligence agency, Mossad. For decades, Mossad has relied on highly trained agents to infiltrate adversaries, but this operation marks a shift in strategy, building insider network from among Iranians and even people in neighboring countries. These recruits were not uniform in their motives. Some opposed Iran's clerical regime on ideological grounds, others were lured by promises of money, life-saving medical care for relatives, or educational opportunities abroad. Now, you remember this, the beginning of this stream, I showed you this brainless person who said that I'm a dangerous person and I accuse people of being collaborators or spies or agents, etc. This is a usual practice. Why do you think there is a Mossad? Why do you think there is a CIA? Why do you think there is an MI6? Why do you think that these countries spend billions and billions and billions of dollars over their secret services? One of the reasons is to hire and recruit agents and spies around the world. And not every agent and spy that you know is just working like a James Bond behind the scenes and spying on people. No, there are so many people, they collaborate with these secret services to create, to shape public opinion, to infiltrate societies, to do lots of dubious work. So, of course, when I accuse some people of doing the bidding of the, let's say, outside powers, I mean, it's clear, you can see that they're helping the infiltration of, for example, Syria, so by these outside powers. And now the result is in front of you, and you have objective eyes to see that all these people who pushed for the regime change in Syria and claimed this is a democratic movement and claimed that this is about the civil society, democracy, women's rights, feminism, etc., which one of them turned out to be true, right? But the people who consistently and persistently and continuously pushed for this narrative for 14 years, do you think that there is someone after 14 years can stay asleep, cannot see what is happening in the country? Of course, they have seen what is happening there, but they continued with lying. So what does this tell you? These people are willingly or unwillingly, they are assets for foreign intelligence and for secret services to achieve this regime change in Syria, and they were successful. And once it is successful, and many of them come and say, "Oh my God, look, we don't know what has happened. We were for the democracy and human rights." No, you should be. I would like to see accountability for what you did, basically, because you pushed for this alternative, and you knew, because we warned you, and you said we are spreading Assadist talking points in this case. So let's go back to this investigation, because for decades, Mossad has relied on highly trained agents to infiltrate adversaries. But this operation marks, as we said, a shift in the strategy, right? And many people were recruited because they just needed life-saving medical care. They wanted educational opportunities abroad. And I mentioned to you two examples of Syrians who were working with the British Secret Service in Aleppo, and both of them received scholarships, one in the United States and the other one in Great Britain. So it's not a coincidence. It is the usual practice, right? So what are the hybrid warfare techniques that Israel used? They used inside sabotage by local recruits, drone and missile strikes on key defense points, and full-scale air assault by the Israeli Air Force. The result, of course, was very severe in the first days of the attack. So the Iran government responded with sweeping crackdown. They arrested thousands of people, persecuted the collaborators, and executed some accused of working with Israel. The crackdown has deepened fears among dissidents and ordinary citizens alike, who now risk being labeled traitors for even minimal dissent. This revelation raises troubling questions about the future of covert warfare. How far will nations go in recruiting citizens of their enemies to act against their own country? And what happens to those caught in the middle, people who see themselves as freedom fighters but are treated as spies? I mean, there is no freedom fighter, in my opinion, who receives money and support from an outside power to bring freedom to his country. That's not a freedom fighter. That's a collaborator. That's a mercenary. If you're a freedom fighter, you should take the risk and challenge authority by yourself without taking money from outside. If you are taking money from outside, instructions from outside, equipment from outside, especially from Israel in this case, you're a collaborator. And if Iran did the same to Israel, Israel would consider them collaborators, spies, and they would put them in jail and probably execute them. So there is no question. This is a usual practice everywhere. This is not something like an exclusive in Iran, right? But we know that during this war against Iran, Trump was hesitant about opening a big front against Iran, didn't want to escalate a lot. That's why he came with these strategic bombers. And he, as I told you back then, he intervened and waged limited strikes on Iran and claimed victory so that he would de-escalate the situation. He didn't want a war. And now we are receiving some troubling reports, and this is coming from Times of Israel. It seems, guys, that a Time of Israel blogger strongly suggests and then threatens that leaks about Trump's involvement with Epstein are Israel's punishment for Trump's refusal to bomb Iran more. He warns it really doesn't pay to start up with Israel, he said. So apparently, one of these bloggers, Josef Janowski, probably a Polish Zionist, he is threatening Trump with leaking more information about the Epstein case and his involvement or possible or alleged involvement with Epstein's illegal and, all these the acts. What do we call them? Pedophile acts. I don't know if Trump did something like that, but the Israelis now threatening him with that. Before I continue today's live streaming, guys, I would like to thank our dear friend Red Access for moderating this live chat. I can see that there are lots of comments today in the live chat. Unfortunately, I'm not able to go and read them all while I am doing this live streaming, but I would like to really thank him for the brilliant job and for, like, he's just doing it by himself, and he's doing it happily, and he's very professional in what he does. So really, thank you, Red Access, for always moderating the live chat, because what we care on this channel is people coming and feeling that they have the opportunity to express their opinions without being slandered or trolled by some brainless people. So somebody says you are Mossad. I don't know who he means. Do you mean I'm a Mossad? I'm starting to laugh, really. So this is the article that I believe is very, very important, guys. We hope you would host Professor Muhammad Marani on your show. I will host him. But if I host him, I'm going to be very, very, very challenging him. So first things first, tomorrow I will undergo surgery. So Thursday and Friday, I'm not going to do live streamings, including our weekly show with our dear friend Tarek Chiril Amar. So I will do 2 shows next week with Tarek, probably Monday and Friday. Let's see how I feel on Monday, if I'm able to do a stream again. And if not, I will see what day I can start doing live streams again. But I talked to our dear friend Tarek, and we agreed that we could do 2 shows next week instead of 1. So we could replace this one that we should have done on Friday, but I cannot do it. So let's go to the most important article of today's stream. And this is a brilliant article. In my opinion, this is the most balanced and most objective article. It says the pros and cons of every side, and which side won what and which side lost what, and why it's a big possibility to witness a second round of war between Iran and Israel very, very soon. Monday mood, Tarek, could be interesting. Yes, I think so too. I will do my best to recover till Monday. I can't promise you, but if I'm recovered on Monday, we'll definitely do Monday and Friday. So, will the next war between Iran and Israel be this month? So we're talking about as soon as late August 2025. Very dangerous question. We hope not, but it's a serious possibility. So let's focus to this article. I couldn't summarize much of this article because it's very important. Israel is likely to launch another war with Iran before December, perhaps even as early as late August. Iran is expecting and preparing for the attack. It played the long game in the first war, pacing its missile attacks as it anticipated a protracted conflict. In the next round, however, Iran is likely to strike decisively from the outset, aiming to dispel any notion that it can be subdued under Israeli military dominance. As a result, the coming war will likely be far bloodier than the first. If Donald Trump caves to Israeli pressure again and joins the fight, the US could face a full-blown war with Iran that will make Iraq look easy by comparison. Israel's June war was never solely about Iran's nuclear program. Rather, it was about shifting the balance of power in the Middle East, with Iranian nuclear capabilities being an important but not decisive factor. Now, this is very important, this context. In this context, Israel's strikes had three main objectives beyond weakening Iran's nuclear infrastructure. So what are these three main objectives beside the nuclear infrastructure? One, it sought to draw the United States into direct military conflict with Iran. Two, to decapitate the Iranian regime. Three, to turn the country into the next Syria or Lebanon, countries that Israel can bomb with impunity and without any US involvement. Now, only one of these three goals was realized. What's more, Trump didn't obliterate Iran's nuclear program, nor has it been set back to a point where the issue can be considered resolved. So, three factors or three objectives were set. Only one of them was achieved in this case. In other words, with its June attacks, Israel achieved a partial victory at best. Its preferred outcome was for Trump to fully engage, targeting both Iran's conventional forces and economic infrastructure. But while Trump favors swift, decisive military action, he fears full-scale war. His strategy in attacking Iran's nuclear facilities was thus designed to limit escalation rather than expand it. In the short term, Trump succeeded, much to Israel's chagrin, but in the long run, he has allowed Israel to trap him in an escalatory cycle. So this is very important, by the way. I didn't think about it much, and now I'm considering it, and I think he is very correct that even by the limited attacks that Trump engaged against Iran, he has fallen into the trap of the Israelis, and he will explain it now. His refusal to escalate beyond a limited bombing campaign was a key reason that Israel agreed to a ceasefire. As the war continued, Israel took serious losses. Its air defenses were degraded, and Iran grew more effective at penetrating them with its missiles. While Israel would have likely continued the conflict if the United States had fully committed, the calculus changed once it became clear that Trump's strikes were one-off. Israel succeeded in drawing Trump and the US into the war, but it failed to keep them there. Israel's other two objectives, however, were clear failures. Despite early intelligence successes such as killing 30 senior commanders and 19 nuclear scientists, it was only able to temporarily disrupt Iranian command and control. Within 18 hours, Iran had replaced most, if not all of these commanders and launched a heavy missile barrage, demonstrating its ability to absorb significant losses and still mount a fierce counterattack. Israel hoped its initial strikes would incite panic within the Iranian regime and hasten its collapse. According to Washington Post, Mossad agents fluent in Persian called senior Iranian officials. Look at this example, it's hilarious. They called senior Iranian officials on their cell phones threatening to kill them and their families unless they filmed videos denouncing the regime and publicly defecting. More than 20 such calls were made in the war's early hours when Iran's ruling elite was still in shock and reeling from significant losses. Yet, there is no evidence a single Iranian general capitulated to the threats, and the regime's cohesion remained intact. Contrary to Israel's expectations, the killing of senior commanders from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps didn't lead to mass protests or an uprising against the Islamic Republic. Instead, Iranians of all political stripes rallied around the flag, if not the regime itself, as a wave of nationalism surged across the country. Indeed, instead of mobilizing the population against the regime, Israel managed to give a new lease on life to the Islamic Republic's narrative. Rather than condemning the regime for investing in a nuclear program, missiles, and the network of allied non-state actors, many Iranians are now angry that these elements of Iran's deterrence proved insufficient. Guys, this is very important because at the beginning of this stream, I showed you this video of Benjamin Netanyahu, and this was posted yesterday on the 12th of August. And this article is published also when exactly, let me just, it's on the 11th of August, right? So we have very important thing that is happening in this case, and that is this article comes before Benjamin Netanyahu posts this video statement. So apparently something is being cooked and someone leaked something to this journalist to write this article, in my opinion. That is a very, very serious possibility. So why would Israel would be interested in a second phase? This is another reason. Israel also failed to turn Iran into a second Syria and establish sustainable aerial dominance independent of US support. While Israel controlled Iranian airspace during the war, it didn't operate with impunity. Iran's missile response inflicted unsustainable damage. Without substantial US assistance, including the use of 25% of the US's THAAD missile interceptors in just 12 days, Israel might have been unable to continue the war. This makes a new Israeli offensive likely. Both Defense Minister Israel Katz and Military Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir have signaled as much. The June war was just the first phase, according to Zamir, who added that Israel is now entering a new chapter of the conflict. Regardless of whether Iran resumes uranium enrichment, Israel is determined to deny it time to replenish its missile arsenal, restore air defenses, or deploy improved systems. That logic is central to Israel's mowing the grass strategy: strike preventively and repeatedly to prohibit adversaries from developing capabilities that could challenge Israeli military dominance. This means that with Iran already rebuilding its military resources, Israel has an incentive to strike sooner rather than later. This is very, very important here. What's more, the political calculus around another attack becomes much more complicated once the United States enters its midterm election season. As a result, a strike could very well take place within the coming months. This, of course, is the outcome that Iranian leaders want to deter. To dispel any illusion that Israel's mowing the grass strategy works, Iran is likely to strike hard and fast at the outset of the next war. While the June war ended inconclusively, the outcome of the next one will hinge on which side learned more and act faster. So we have three questions here to pose. Can Israel replenish its interceptors faster than Iran can rebuild its launchers and restock its missile arsenal? 2, does the Mossad still have a deep presence inside Iran, or were most of its assets spent in pursuit of regime collapse during the first war? And 3rd, has Iran gained more insight into penetrating Israel's air defenses than Israel has into closing its gaps? For now, neither side can answer these questions with confidence. It is precisely because Iran cannot be certain that a more forceful response will neutralize Israel's strategy that it is likely to reassess its nuclear posture, especially now that other pillars of its deterrence, including the so-called axis of resistance and nuclear ambiguity, have proven insufficient. Trump's response to a second Israeli war with Iran may prove decisive. He appears unwilling to engage in a prolonged conflict. Politically, his initial strikes triggered a civil war within the MAGA movement. Militarily, the 12-day war exposed critical gaps in the United States missile stockpile. Yet, this is the trap where Trump has fallen. By greenlighting the opening salvo, Trump has walked into Israel's trap, and it's unclear whether he can find a way out, especially if he clinches to zero enrichment as the baseline for a deal with Iran. Limited engagement is likely no longer an option. Trump will have to either fully join the war or sit it down or sit it out. And staying out requires more than a one-time refusal. It demands sustained resistance to Israeli pressure, something he has so far shown neither the will nor the strength to pull off. I think this article is very important, but the real question here is if the United States and Israel share the same goal in Iran, and that is a change of behavior by Iran. And when we say a change of behavior of Iran, we're talking about the strategic geopolitical posture of Iran. If they are expecting for Iran to change that it's through military threats, I think they're delusional in this case to put Iran under such immense military pressure to change Iran's course. But if Iran does some U-turn, that already means regime change, because that means that the strategic goals of the Islamic Revolution is no longer right adoptable. And we see that Iran already can read the room in the Middle East, that what is happening in the region, that they lost many of their allies in Palestine, in Syria, in Lebanon, not completely, but their power has been degraded. They lost Syria, for example. Gaza is completely gone. The Ansarullah has limited capability in reaching into the Palestine cause through long-range missiles, etc. So Iran can see that it has to preserve its own national security, territorial integrity. So they're showing some flexibility with the United States in the region, that they are ready for negotiations for a nuclear deal. But I also said, and I criticized Iran by saying this, that Iran is delusional to think that the Americans will hold the hand of the Iranians and shake hands with them. They will hold your hand and break it. Right? This is what the Americans are looking for, not for handshake, but breaking the hand of Iran. Therefore, trying to be flexible, maybe, you're trying to buy time, but sooner or later, Iran will find itself in front of bitter choice. They have to make a choice to either create a decisive deterrence vis-a-vis Israel and the United States, so they would never ever think of bombing Iran ever again, and that logically means that they would go into a nuclear option, or they will lose ground slowly but surely. And it's happening. It's happening now. And two of the ways that is happening, the Zangitor corridor, which Pezeshkian says, sorry, but this guy is complete fool. He says we shouldn't be panicking and everything is all right, and it's not as bad as we think it is. But today, one of the IRGC commanders, he threatened to stop this project, and I said, what tools Iran have, basically? So this is, let me show you. It's so crazy what Iranians do. It's just like they wait the shit to hit the fan, and then they just want to react. With or without Russia, Iran will block US corridor in Caucasus Vilayati. So this is the top Iranian advisor, Ali Akbar Vilayati, says Iran has always opposed the creation of the Zangitor corridor, as it would alter the region's geopolitics by adding a US base on Iran's northern border, regional borders, and lead to Armenia's disintegration, right? But I asked this simple question here, and I said, what tools does Iran have to block the corridor except for military tools, right? And if they want to use a military tool, what are they going to do? Go to war against Armenia? It's too late. It's too late. It's too late. Some people come and tell me, they say, they oh my God, look at the Iranians. They wait for things to happen and then they react. It's worse than that. It's worse than that. They shoot their own feet, I would argue. They shoot their own feet. Have you seen the statements of Sayyid Mohammad Marandi and other officials? I mean, he's not an official. Sayyid Mohammad Marandi is a dear friend, and we respect him highly and dearly. But they shoot their own feet. They continue talking about Nagorno-Karabakh as being part of Azerbaijan, and that Iran stands on the side of Azerbaijan in this case. Okay, Habibi, do whatever you want, but then don't come and do all this hype in the media and elsewhere, then saying that look what Azerbaijan is doing, they're Zionist agents. Well, if you consider them a Zionist agent and they attacked the Armenians and you supported them back then, which means you were on the side of the Zionist agents. Now, Iranian officials and also our dear friend Marandi, he criticizes Erdogan day and night, calls him a Zionist collaborator, that he's helping Israel and he's using the Palestine cause to, to infiltrate the Arabic and Islamic Ummah, and he is right. But why don't we also say the entire truth, and that is, when Assad refused to meet with Erdogan, Iran exerted maximum pressure beyond the diplomatic channels against Damascus back then to meet with Erdogan, to the extent that the Iranian government stopped the fuel deliveries to Syria for 3 months. The entire country was paralyzed. No cars can drive, no factories can be operated, no electricity, nothing, to force Assad to go and shake hands with Turkish Erdogan. Now they're attacking Erdogan, but after what? Iran and Russia, they saved the ass of Erdogan in 2016 when the 2016, was it? Yeah. When the coup attempt happened against him, they propped him up. Alexander Dugin, by the way, is not the brain of Putin, although these people who think he's not. Alexander Dugin, however, he has been pushing for a strategic alliance with Turkey. Sorry to say, but he thinks that's part of his multipolar world. And what happened basically, because their hatred toward Pashinyan, it pushed them into the laps of Aliyev and Erdogan. So this is a photo. Imagine Alexander Dugin, and this is his daughter, by the way. Russian philosopher Alexander Dugin celebrates the results of Azerbaijan's Turkish-backed war against Russia's treaty ally Armenia, because why take the L when you can pretend you were always on the same team as NATO's largest army in Europe? So those people who now, on their own personal profiles, keep attacking Erdogan and Aliyev, they were the ones responsible for propping them up, right? Let's be honest about this thing, seriously. I just want to thank our friend Danny. Do you think there will be a war between Turkey and Israel? The simple answer is no. There is not going to be a war between Israel and a NATO country. Let's not forget that Turkey is a NATO country. It has the largest army in NATO, and it's instrumental and very important for the United States. And now the United States sees Turkey and Azerbaijan as very, very valuable partners in Central Asia and also in the Middle East. They have basically handed over most of Syria, or 3/4 of Syria, to Jolani, which is directly cooperating with the Turkish MIT, directly, under his direct control. And the rest is in the hands of Israel in the south, and in the east, the Kurdish side in the hands of the Americans. So no, there is not going to be war between Turkey and Israel at no time, unless Turkey withdraws from NATO. So, guys, if war happens between Iran and Israel, what the next Israel-Iran missile war will look like, right? This is an investigation by the Haaretz, and I summarized this article for you. So, as both Israel and Iran advance their military capabilities, experts warn that any future missile conflict could unfold on an entirely new, more sophisticated battlefield. The August 8 Haaretz analysis outlines how each side is preparing and what a fresh clash might entail. 1. A strategic arms race intensifies. Israel has rapidly upgraded its missile defense systems. Meanwhile, Iran is rebuilding its ballistic arsenal, potentially incorporating new technology to counter Israel's defenses. This evolving dynamic sets the groundwork for a more advanced and perilous confrontation. 2. Speed, precision, and unpredictability. Rather than protracted exchanges, future conflict may begin with lightning-fast precision strikes. Iran could employ coordinated missile salvos targeting regional infrastructure or signaling early intent. Israel, relying on cutting-edge detection and interception tools, would likely respond instantly with overwhelming defensive and counteroffensive firepower. 3. Escalation beyond national borders. Given the heightened stakes, a conflict could spill beyond Israel and Iran, drawing in regional proxies, affecting neighboring states, and triggering global ripples in energy markets, politics, and security. So why all this matter for us? Because 1, rising stakes. Iran's growing missile strength and Israel's advanced defenses create a high-tension equilibrium where any provocation could ignite widespread retaliation. 2, rapid escalation risk. With more powerful and precise weapons at the ready, conflict could begin and spread within hours. And 3, wider regional fallout. The next flashpoint may not just involve Israel and Iran, but actors across the Middle East and beyond. This is an investigation, again, by the haaretz that I wanted to share with you. But this all lies in the agenda and the project of Netanyahu and the theorists and the planners in Israel and abroad. The idea that Israel's borders cannot be exclusive to the borders set by the UN, but rather they have to occupy the entire of Palestine, ethnically cleanse the Palestinians, and take over the West Bank, Jerusalem, and even move further. And they're doing it in Lebanon, in Syria, and they're eyeing on the Sinai in Egypt, etc. So this all goes into one big project, and that is the Greater Israel Project. The unfortunate truth that we have to tell to our audience all the time, that we cannot really ignore the fact that is laying in front of us, whether through statements, whether through military operations, whether through the objective realities that we see, the changes in the maps in the region, all indicate that the end goal of Israel is the Greater Israel Project. And as long as Israel doesn't really set borders for itself and it's an expansionist country in the region, we will see the rise of state and non-state actors resisting against the Israeli expansionist project in the region. And Netanyahu coming, and because we started this video with Netanyahu's video, right? I know that you were disgusted, most of you are massive disgusted. Nobody in the world thinks that Netanyahu has goodwill for the Iranians. Like, if you're an Iranian and you hate your government, you hate the Islamic Republic, but if you have a minimum sanity and minimum humanity, and you watched what Netanyahu has done to the Palestinians, right? You could not be naive enough to believe that he wants the best for the Iranian people, right? Even though you hate your, let's say, Iranian regime. And I think that should be the case with every Iranian. I mean, if Netanyahu hasn't committed all these atrocities, crimes against humanity, against Palestinians and non-Palestinians in the region, maybe, just maybe, I'm saying, if all these atrocities that were televised on our smartphones never happened, maybe, just maybe, some people would have been fallen into the trap of Netanyahu. But after all these atrocities and the track record of human rights violations, an incredible amount of violence, inhumane barbarity against the Palestinians and others in the region, nobody believes you, Mr. Netanyahu. That would be my closing statement for this live streaming, which is going to be the last one for this week. So guys, Thursday and Friday is not going to be, there's not going to be a live stream. Tomorrow I will undergo surgery, nothing serious. I will have to rest. Hopefully I will be doing fine by Monday. If I'm doing fine on Monday, I will definitely have our dear friend Tarek Chevil Amar, and then we do another one on Friday. So we replace this Friday's one with Monday. So let's see about that. And as our dear friend Red Access says, don't forget to leave a like, people. While you're watching, like, of 10,000 people watch, 1,000 people put like. So 9 out of 10 don't click on like. But if you click on like, this content reaches to very wider audience. I would really appreciate if you do that, guys. That would be very lovely. And check before leaving this stream if you're already subscribed. Subscription also helps this channel reach to more audience. And if you like to support the independent work I'm doing, you can become a patron, patreon.com/Syriana Analysis, or there are different means in the description below. You can support this independent work. And by the way, just to let you know, there is also the book of our friend William Van Wagenen in the description below, the dirty role of the CIA in orchestrating the regime change war in Syria. Those are affiliated links. You don't pay anything extra. But if you click on these Amazon links and buy the book, which I highly recommend because I personally read it, then you will understand the Syrian conflict in a much better way. And if you do that, you're also supporting this channel in an indirect way. So thank you so much, guys, for tuning in to today's stream. Love you all. And stay safe, and I will see you soon. Peace be upon you, upon your families. Salam.